Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I am finally going to do my first impressions on this Lil Native. I've had a few knives lately that I unboxed like way longer ago than I typically do my first impressions on, but I've had so many things I'm cycling through pockets that I actually have only carried this knife for about a half a day, realistically, which is crazy. I played with it quite a bit at my desk, but I've just had other things taking up pocket time. So finally ready to do my first impressions on this. I also wanted to get back outdoors. Sorry, I just filmed a couple of videos and now my butt hurts because I'm sitting on an awkward rock. Anyway, this is the Lil Native. I had experienced the Lil Native before, but I've never owned one. My brother had one that I borrowed one time for a few days, and it was a great time. I enjoyed the knife. I carried it. I used it a little bit when it was his knife, but not hard at all. It was just kind of feeling it out. He had the all-black one in S30V. It's a cool little blade. A great secondary, in my opinion. So I knew when I purchased this from my buddy Tom Hosang Outdoors that I already liked the model. And I'd been wanting to get another one for a while. Part of me was waiting for the S90V carbon fiber Sprint that's still yet to come out to hit dealers, and then I was going to pick up one of those. But I was able to get this for about half of what those are going to cost, and I really like Rex45. So this one is the Rex45 Sprint Run, and it's got the burnt orange handle scales, as is almost synonymous with Spyderco's Rex45 Sprint Runs at this point. The only Rex45 that I can recall them putting out that wasn't in burnt orange G10 was the Knife Center exclusive Tree Rex Shaman, which I also own. My Shaman is in Rex45. And it's, ooh, that was quite the burp. And I really like Rex45 as a blade steel. If I'm going to be honest, I think it makes more sense on a knife like the Shaman than it does on a little blade like this. But that does not mean that it is a bad choice for a Lil Native. It's almost like too much steel for what this knife really is. Rex45 is a fantastic steel. It's one of my favorites, and I like it on my Shaman because I use the Shaman out in places like this to clear trails and fool around with wood for fun. And pretend I'm a bushcrafter with, and all that kind of stuff. And so this knife is just not a knife that is big enough to be an outdoor folder for me. This is going to be a secondary knife that will make it in my pocket as a secondary a lot because of some reasons that we're going to discuss here. But first impressions of this knife are very good. When I do my full review, it'll probably be more of a kind of update on how it went actually using this knife, and seeing how it really performed for my cutting tasks, because this knife is tiny. The blade length on here, and especially the sharpened edge, is one of the smallest that would make it in my pocket as a secondary, and so I want to make sure through my testing and through my experiences with it, and what I'll probably be addressing in my full review, is that it's really as capable as I feel it is, and capable enough that I would like recommend it as a solid choice as a secondary for anybody who's looking for a knife to fill the role like I am. So, a couple of things jumping in. Of course, we've already talked about materials. This is a compression lock. I believe the Lil Native is available also in a back lock. I have no interest in that. I don't like back locks. But I love that this one is a compression lock. And I love that you get a nice deep carry wire pocket clip. I do wish this knife is not immune to it, just like many others. I wish that this wire pocket clip came all the way to the butt end of the knife. That would be better, in my opinion. But it's a good clip. I really like Spyderco's wire pocket clips. I find that I get good retention with them. I like that if they bang up against something, like if I lean up against my car, they're not going to gouge right into the paint or into leather if I sit somewhere, or onto the wood of a chair if I sit on a nice chair. Like, this knife goes in my back left pocket, and so it's fairly likely at some point in time, if it's in my pocket enough, that I'm going to accidentally bump up against something, and a wire pocket clip is great for that because it's just so non-harsh. So I like that. Anyway, let's talk about a couple of things about the knife. We'll just kind of go through my relatively normal list at this point. Hopefully this wind doesn't totally botch my audio. But let's talk ergos first. So This is a tiny knife, but the Ergos work like a much bigger knife. With the blade open, you see we have this generous forward finger choil, and we've got quite a point here, and we've got a swoop down, and it's kind of there's a lot happening here. It's a fairly complex handle shape. It's not the most neutral in the world, mostly because of that forward choil. But what happens with that forward choil is I can get all 4 fingers onto this tiny knife. You can even see there's a little bit hanging out back here, the way that I grab this in a hammer grip. In a saber grip, that amount at the back disappears, but this knife fills my hand. And for a knife this small, that especially when it's closed, to be this tiny little thing, to fill my hand that well, it's a beautiful thing. A lot of people throw out the term like little big knife for knives that fill your hand, all 4 fingers, but this one is a prime example of a little big knife, because I get a excellent grip on this. I get virtually as much grip, frankly, as I do on like a standard para 3 on this little guy. So now I have less cutting edge out in front of my hand, but Ergos are just really, really good on here for my hands. I like it quite a bit. The scales are a little bit boxy in traditional Golden Colorado Spyderco fashion. So some people may find, like, if the Para 3 and PM2, the like kind of right angle edges of the scales bother you, it's kind of the same here. They are chamfered a little bit. It's not totally a right angle. They do knock down the very, very corner of it, but you can see they aren't like super rounded. It's a fairly boxy handle shape. So that doesn't bother me, but I know a lot of people comment on that and say it bothers them. For my hands, it doesn't, but this knife just fits my hands great. The G10 on here as well is it's pretty typical of Golden Colorado Peel Ply G10. It feels good. It's a pleasant amount of grippiness without being super sandpapery. I like the amount of texture I get here, while it's still not a pocket shredder, and it's not a pain to hold on to or anything like that. There's no real jimping on here anywhere either, except for right up here where you can see the liners kind of protrude a little bit, just on the liners themselves, and so it's like set down below the level of the handle scales, and if I'm not using the forward choil, my thumb does land there, which it kind of feels nice that it's like I have to push in to even feel the jimping. It's not aggressive, it's fine jimping, feels good. And then if I'm in the forward choil, my thumb goes up past it anyway, so I don't even know it's there. That's jimping that doesn't bother me one bit, and I might even say is an advantage if I'm not using the forward choil. But it's very rare for me to hold this knife and not have my pointer finger in the forward choil. Alright, so Ergos are good. Carry on this knife is fantastic because it's tiny and it's lightweight, and I mean it just works. The clip side internal liner is milled out pretty extensively. The show side, which houses the compression lock, is not, because it's got the compression lock, which is kind of a moving part. But yeah, I don't know if it will show, but I'll try. In the, yeah, I think you can see it. This side, there is some material removed. So they've even gone further than just making it small. They've removed material to make it lightweight, which is nice. It carries, in my opinion, like a dream. It's just not very big this way. It's definitely very small this way. It's not overly thick this way. So in pocket, it's easy for this knife to kind of disappear. And of course it does. It's a tiny little sucker. The first part of its name is Lil, so it carries Lil. And couple that with the wire clip, which I've already talked relatively extensively about. It's just a great knife in pocket. So that's definitely passing my test so far. The only thing left, I guess, to talk about other than cutting, which I'm going to kind of save for the full review to an extent, is the action. Now, holes are greater than studs. That's kind of my thing. I've got stickers and shirts that say it. I greatly prefer holes to thumb studs, and I also prefer holes to flippers. My favorite method of deployment on a knife is, I did that weird because I was trying to do it this way, to Spidey flick. I love Spydercos because, partially, They have holes, and my favorite lock that Spyderco uses, one of my favorite locks in general, is the compression lock. I like the way it functions, I like the way I can operate it, and I like the amount of strength I get out of it. I've yet to have one fail on me, ever, even like batoning and stuff. It's just a great lock in my opinion. So the fact that this one has the hole, and I can Spidey flick it reliably, and it has the compression lock, so I can drop it down just like that. It's, for a small knife, remarkably fun to play with. It plays, it fidgets, I fidget with it, much like any of my other Spydercos. And so I like that even though this one's tiny, I can still do all of my typical Spyderco playtime with. It just is what I want it to be in the action department. Runs on washers, has a compression lock, deploys with a hole. It's exactly right for me. I can, oh, that was bad. I can thumb flick it. That works as well, but I don't do that. I just Spidey flick it every single time, and it's great. It works really, really well for me in that way. So the only thing left really is cutting, and so far it cuts quite well. Like I said, what I want to determine by the time that I do my full review on this is how well it actually does based on how small this blade length is. Whether this is a knife that I'm confident as a secondary is going to stand up to the tasks I expect of my secondary knives that go in my pocket. Now, if it doesn't, that's okay. I can still like this knife, and it can become more of a niche offering for me and just not be a regular secondary knife for me to put in my pocket. But I imagine it's going to, just based on the way I can interface with this knife and have it in my hand. The edge that's on it right now is very good. This was put on by the first owner, I think, but it's not too thick behind the edge. It's got a great edge on it. It's got a good tip that's precise. It's got all the things that I like about most of my Spydercos. There's just less edge there. So I got to find out if processing cardboard and cutting zip ties and going through paracord now and then and all of my typical EDC stuff, if I find that this feels less capable than, say, the Para 3. Because the Para 3 is an excellent secondary knife for me that I would consider kind of a benchmark. And so maybe I'll even end up doing kind of a comparison between this and the Para 3, and that might be interesting to do as well. But for now, this is my first impressions. These are my first impressions on the Spyderco Lil Native in Rex45 and Burnt Orange G10. I like this knife. It's just a fun little blade, and it fits within my taste. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. I like Spydercos that do all these things. So, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.